What's up, comic book fans? Welcome back to the M.I.B. Master Museum. I'll be your curator today. And guys, we've been talking about this with some of our comic book collecting buddies for the last few weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks, that we wanted to branch out with M.I.B. Master Museum and delve into other genres, if you will. And the comic book world has always been fascinating to us. To me, I've been a huge comic book fan ever since I was a kid, growing up in the 1970s. So this was a no-brainer for me at some point in time to start adding a comic book sector to our museum. And I used to own hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comic books, the older ones. I'm a retro guy, a kid from the 1970s, growing up in the 1980s. So, I'm a retro guy. I'm a throwback. So, I only really collect, or I used to collect, all of the older comic books. And the bigger comic books, I was always a huge fan of. The more, the magazines, if you will. My father used to bring these big, beautiful comic book magazines. They weren't comic books. They were more magazines than anything, like the one you're seeing right here. The titles like Eerie and Creepy, Vampirella, those type of the Gold Key, smaller, big book type comic books. They weren't the standard comic book. They weren't made like the traditional comic book. They were more magazine-like. And with the black and white, pictures inside, panels. So that's what I was introduced to at a very young age. And Vampirella was a staple in our household as far as comic books. For whatever reason, I got a lot of Vampirella comic books, magazines, if you will. So she was so cool to me, given the fact that she was a vampire and she was a superhero. Or you can say a reluctant one, but nevertheless a superhero with all these powers. So here at M.I.B, I said, we wanted to usher in a new day here with our collecting comic books. But we just didn't want to usher this new era in with any old thing, with any old comic book. I said I needed a comic book. I needed a comic book character to usher in our new comic book sector here at the M.I.B. Master Museum. And the only character, it was a no-brainer for me, the only character and superhero that I wanted to start this entire era off with here at M.I.B. Master Museum with our comic book sector was Vampirella. And we have from Warren Magazine, issue number 52, from July 1976. Vintage, guys. This is from my personal collection. I have a few left in my collection that survived a lot of moving and giving away and selling comic books. A few survived all of that, and my Vampirella issue number 52, 1976, survived. Guys, if you're just joining us, welcome to the M.I.B. Master museum channel. Don't readjust your TV sets or your tablets or your cell phones or whatever you're watching it on. Yes, you are seeing a comic book in our museum collection. Not just any old comic book, though. This is issue number 52, July 1976, Vampirella. And as you can see, back then, even then, this was $1, which is practically unheard of for a magazine or a comic book. The price, what happened to 12 cents and 35 cents and 25 cents? This was a whopping $1. So you really got your money's worth. And in this issue, snared in a sorcerer's circle of madness, the ravishing alien reverts to raging monster, Vampirella, the Beauty and the Beast. Vampirella, just give you a quick background history on Vampirella. She was created by Trina Robbins, Tom Sutton, Frank Frazetta, and the first issue of Vampirella came out in 1969. Warren Publishing started publishing Vampirella from 1969 to 1983, and then Harris Publishing took over from there from 1991 to 2010. And then from there, Dynamite Entertainment picked the Vampirella series up from 2010 all the way until now, to the present. So there's been quite a few people involved in keeping Vampirella alive and breathing. There's a lot of background history to Vampirella. How did she, her origins, how did she become, she was from a planet originally, from the planet Draculon, a planet that had rivers and oceans of living blood. And this is how these vampire aliens survived. Well, the problem with that was that Draculon, the planet Draculon, started to dry up. The rivers started to run dry, and the population started to die off. A group of astronauts landed on Draculon, and Vampirella and a few others were sent to investigate the situation, and had a battle with these aliens. And Vampirella killed one of the astronauts, and found that these astronauts indeed had blood in their running through their veins. So she took the spaceship and piloted it back to Earth. And guys, you kind of can put two and two together. But that was one part. There's been a lot of different storylines and on Vampirella's origin, as she moved from publishing to publishing, publisher to publisher. They kind of altered that, and it gave her more of a superheroine type of feel to her. Made her more of a, one of the good guys. And I'm gonna just open this up for you. This is a decent book. It's not in pristine condition, but it's been kept very well over the years. I've had this book, oh man, probably over 30, maybe, yeah, probably 30 years, somewhere around there, close to 30 years, 28, 29, 30 years, maybe 30, 35 years, somewhere around there. I've had this in my comic book collection for a long time. It's one of the few that has actually survived. And here's this, and the cool thing about these big, beautiful comic books is that they have all these awesome commercials, if you will, or ads in them. And here's our inside. we're trying to do something different. We'll be taking you inside of the book. Let's just get you a better shot here. We'll take you inside of the book. These guys know that I don't really open anything. So with the comic book, so the comic book guys, my comic book fans and subscribers will be happy to know that I'll be opening up the comic books. we want to do a little bit of everything for everybody. And there's the issue number 52 from July, all the way from July 1976. It smells like July 1976. Let's get you another page here. And there's Eerie Comics. We'll be doing more of the Eerie Comics, Vampirella, creepy comics, things of that nature. We'll have other comic books as well, but just more or less the bigger, beautiful magazine versions like you're seeing here. But if you want to have something else, if you have some ideas or some comments or some opinions, we want to hear all of that. Get you a blown out shot here. We want to hear all of that. Leave your comments right underneath this video in the comment section. Guys, what do you think about our first comic book video? Do you want to see us do more? Do you want us to stop right here at the first comic book video? No more comic book videos. The artwork was simply superb, absolutely gorgeous, fantastic. And Vampirella was one of those superheroes, one of those characters that you simply couldn't get enough of. I mean, she was so alluring and beautiful that her comic magazine sold very, very well. So that was never an issue for the Vampirella series. And this is why so many publishing companies kept picking up the series. Very well written. Artwork was awesome. You know, every panel was beautifully done. So you got your money's worth from these big magazine comics. And that's what attracted me to Vampirella and the creepy magazines and the eerie magazines, the horror comics to me were at the top of my list. And especially when you paired them, the horror with the superhero genre, and you combine those two genres, made for a simply fantastic read and comic book and storyline. Give you a couple more. It's beautifully done. Beautifully done. And like I said, Vampirella is one of my all-time favorite of the horror comic magazine genres. She was just a phenomenal superhero. but we wanted to add we wanted to just add more. Get you a blown out shot here. More options here at the M.I.B. Master Museum. Let's turn the book around for you. And this book is from 1976. And I wonder if the comic codes had anything to say about these type of books, or were they even a part of the comic codes? Because Vampirella was very risque. Even looking at this beautiful cover, very risque, very alluring. So I don't even know if this has a comic code on it. This might not have a comic code. But my comic book guys would probably know better than me. But I think Vampirella really tested the boundaries of what you could and could not do as a comic book company and publishing company. I mean, she was right there on the boundary lines. And I think that's what made her such a popular magazine and popular superhero. Because her creators simply didn't care about that. They wanted to get good quality, action-packed issues out to the fans and the public. And the fans and the public ate it up, you know. Just a beautiful cover. And like I said, this is a book that I've had in my personal collection for nearly 30 years. So, but this is the first comic book that we will be ushering in our new comic book sector here at M.I.B. Master Museum. Our first comic book that will be ushering in our new comic book episodes to come. So we wanted to start off with a bang, kind of get people talking and chattering about it. And there's no other superhero on the planet, horror comic book wise, superhero like Vampirella that can get the blood going, no pun intended, can heat the blood up real quick. Like Vampirella, she can really get the blood heated up. Guys, we want to thank you for spending some time with us today here at the M.I.B. Master Museum in our new comic book section of our museum. We have more on the way. We'll be doing these comic books. It depends on, you know, because we're still looking for quality. I still like my comic books and magazines to look very good condition to decent condition. Like this one is in pretty fair, pretty decent condition for a book that came out in 1976. So we're still looking for quality and condition, but we want to do one maybe once or twice a month. Because we still are, we're a action figure museum. So we want to just try it out. But maybe once or twice a month, we'll be bringing our comic books videos to you guys. Guys, thank you for stopping by. You know the routine. God bless. And keep collecting.